We all have a dad story about how our father failed us or empowered us to be better men. And a lot of us in my generation didn't grow up with a father, or if they did, their father wasn't really there for them or had very little influence on them. Sometimes we get caught up in playing the blame game for what our father didn't do, and we stay there without moving on. I know I did this for a large part of my life, and I was angry at my dad for all of his failures when it came to me, my younger brother, and my younger half-sister. It took me a while to realize that he was operating with the only examples and resources he had at his disposal. There was no other man there trying to show him how to be a better dad or a husband or even a man. He couldn't jump on YouTube and type that in to get an answer. We're pretty fortunate to live in the time that we do. What's going on, fellas? I want to welcome you to Alpha Dad Consulting. I am your host, G. Vidal, and on this show, we focus on helping family men rise above the challenges they face as husbands and fathers, to embracing their role as a leader so that they can create the life at home they truly desire. We do this by bringing you tactics, strategies, resources, and conversations with incredible men who are playing this game of being a family leader at a high level. On this episode, I had the privilege and honor to interview a man who I've been learning from through his content on Instagram. His name is Ryan King. Ryan has a rapidly growing and successful Instagram page called The Wisdom of Kings that speaks to masculinity and what it means to be a good man. Growing up heavily involved in sports as a baseball pitcher, he learned a lot of hard lessons, but most importantly, he learned how to always bet on himself and meet any challenge head on. Ryan told everyone, including his wife, at the age of 25, that he would make enough money and retire by the age of 35. Of course, no one believed him, but the man made it happen anyways. Personally, that's what I really admire about Ryan, is his level of certainty and confidence that he will be successful in anything he tackles. Please enjoy my conversation with Ryan King as we dive into topics surrounding fatherhood, family life, and the infamous red pill movement that's gained so much traction these past few years. Let's go.
I can see the enemy approaching the battleground. Hear the drums pound like a thunder sound loud. I gather up my crowd to prepare them for what's coming. We've been summoned.
Yeah, brother. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. I wanted to kind of dive into some of these amazing topics that you like to speak on, right? And dive into just kind of your world in terms of being an entrepreneur and that journey. But where I really kind of wanted to start with you, man, is sort of just your background. Growing up as a king, right, in your household, what that was like, and then also just your relationship with your own father, what that dynamic was like, and how that kind of played, and for better or for worse, depending on our stories, right, with our own fathers, played an impact or had an impact on the man that you've become. In parenting your own kids and in the husband you are to your wife. I just would like to get some insight on that if you wouldn't mind sharing your background on that.
Yeah. So I had a pretty normal childhood. I think what's odd now is, I would say it's almost abnormal, but, my parents are still married. I didn't really have anything go on as a kid that, really was traumatic. I think for the most part, I was allowed to just grow up, the way kids are supposed to. And as far as my relationship with my dad, it was really good. We were really close till I would say I was about 12. And then he got a job working at corporate. Mm. And at that point, I didn't see him a whole lot. But especially like baseball are the main memories I have with my dad. And we were out at the field every day, all the time. And I've written about my dad a little bit, but I really don't have a lot of memories of childhood. Most people I talk to have a lot of memories of childhood. They're usually traumatic.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And for me, I don't have a whole lot of memories. I have memories of like vacations, or special events, things like that. But it's been interesting as an adult going back and talking to my dad.
Yeah.
And saying, what was it like? What were you trying to do as you were raising me? Things like that. Um, just getting his advice, but I wouldn't say we're like super close.
Mm.
Um, not for any particular reason. Just once I left the house, I just kind of started doing my own thing, and my parents just kind of started doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And there really hasn't been anything come up as an adult where I like needed my dad.
That's what you mean.
We don't, for whatever reason, I think it's just my particular family. We just don't go out of our way to do like to see each other, other than holidays.
Gotcha.
And like, I didn't know that was not normal until I got married and my wife was with her family. But I'm like, what's the deal with this hang out with your family type stuff?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say, if anything, I think in hindsight, especially if I've been exposed to the way people have been raised, experiences people have had in their lives, I think the biggest thing my parents did for me was really to just protect me from anything bad happening.
Mm.
And so much of um, what I've observed with, men, women, whatever, that are having issues, I just never had to do
Yeah.
like, I think I was just protected from a lot of that stuff. And I think I was allowed to just develop what I would say is probably a pretty natural development. And I didn't have anything screwed up.
Yeah.
And so many people, I think, now are having to overcome shame or learn confidence, or just, I could talk for hours about all the different things
Yeah.
I've come up against with other men that they're having to deal with. And I've kind of seen it reflected in the way that I've raised my own kids. So much of the stuff that I write about masculinity or relationships or things like that, my boys have already started doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And it hasn't even had to be like somehow had to have a conversation about it. Just, the most natural thing in the world for them to take certain steps. Like, I wrote a series of stories about a month ago talking about how a man should protect the wife, or protect the woman. And she said it was funny after I wrote that. She was with my boys at the grocery store the other day, and they were walking into the parking lot, and there was this guy that was like acting a little weird.
Okay.
And without even saying anything, my boys just got out in front of her, in between her and the guy that was acting.
Yeah.
And we've never had that conversation.
So just naturally they're just kind of drawn to being protectors. Yeah.
They just did it.
Yeah.
And I honestly think so much of what we see with men being confused about masculinity, or I really honestly think that if you just got out of the way, one of the things I've done is I've really insulated them, not from hardship. Like, I haven't raised them in a bubble, but I've been very cognizant of the idea that they're very impressionable. So they're like wet clay.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one that's going to make an impression on them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to allow media or their friends or schools, I'm in charge of what makes an impression upon them. Or just doesn't make an impression at all.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
They're wet clay. I'm either going to make an impression of some kind if I have it,
Yeah.
or I'm not going to make an impression, but I'm not going to let the world make an impression either.
Yeah.
I'm going to let them develop on their own.
Yeah.
And I think it's been really funny, and I think that's where I was really fortunate as a man. That's kind of what my upbringing was like. And so much of the things that I've seen happen to struggle with and deal with have just come so naturally to me. I don't know any other way to be. And I have to think that's just the absence of trauma. Like my dad was a dad, but he wasn't nearly. I mean, what's funny now is like I think the dads that are really active now are 10 times better dads than even the best dads in like the 80s.
Like the previous generations. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, guys that are really focused on fatherhood now to a degree that's so far beyond what I was.
It's interesting. Sorry to interrupt. It's interesting that you mentioned that because I wonder, do you think that it's because of the lack of like resources? You know what I mean? How we have now everything kind of at our disposal, right? Like your sons have you as an example, and you can speak to masculinity, you can speak to those traits, but maybe like your father, my father, right? They didn't have those type of men around that were like, hey, you should probably be a better dad. You should probably show up in this way, right? Or be more present. It was all very much like if you're a provider and you provide for the household, you provide the roof, you provide the water, the shelter, all that stuff, like you're good, right? Like that's your past. So I just wonder if you've thought about that and you think that there's a discrepancy there, and that might be the defining factor, right, as to why that might be.
Yeah, absolutely. The access to resources is huge.
Yeah.
Even for me as a dad and as a husband, I'm like the elder statesman in the whole space in a lot of ways talking about this because my kids are 12 and 14.
Yeah.
I've been married for 15 years. When I got married, when I was at the stage where most of my audience is, were less than 5 years of marriage or not even married yet, and kids under the age of 5, whatever. At that point in time, for me, there weren't podcasts about this stuff. 15 years ago?
No, there wasn't.
Podcasts were sports. YouTube was cat videos.
Yeah, there's still that.
You had books.
Yeah.
But it was whatever books you knew to read at the bookstore. Like there was no social media component really. There weren't Facebook groups. None of that stuff existed. So I definitely think resources are part of it, and I think a lot of guys, when you have a bad upbringing, it's like, let's say you grew up with an alcoholic father.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a neutral reaction to it. You're either going to be alcoholic like him, or you're never going to touch alcohol your entire life.
Yeah, it's like one of the two one of the two sides of the spectrum, right? Yeah. I see what you mean.
So what's happened, I think, is a lot of guys grew up without good fathers. And so you're seeing a split where you've got a bunch of deadbeat fathers still. But the ones that didn't take that trip have decided, I'm going to be the best damn father I could possibly be. And I know how to do that now because I have these resources.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of two things. I would say my dad didn't give me any trauma. I don't have a full argument. He was very loving. He was very present.
Yeah.
I wrote a story, where we would get in fights a lot about baseball.
Okay.
And he would yell and scream at me, and I would yell and scream back, and he would throw stuff. He never put his hands on me. I never remember being afraid of him. Yeah. We would just yell at each other.
Yeah.
But I would yell too.
Yeah.
But I do remember after every time we got in a fight, I would wake up the next morning and on a yellow legal pad, he would have written an apology to me.
Wow.
And I would wake up and it was just like folded over 4 times in the nightstand, And so he was definitely, he told me he loved me. He told me he was proud of me. Yeah. He would hug on me, until, about 12 or 13. And then at that point, like I said, he got really busy.
Yeah.
He was self-employed until I was 13. So
was he?
Okay. Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he had like a huge influence of, I don't remember us having heart-to-heart talks about anything. really teaching me how to be a man or any of that stuff.
Okay.
Um, but he was very much, compared to what I hear from most guys my age, most guys in my generation, older, their dad never told them they were proud of them, never told them they loved them, And to this day, if I need anything, I can text him today and he would come over right now.
Yeah.
He just doesn't initiate a lot of that, like, hey, let's go hang out.
Yeah. So it's probably just not his nature, not like his habit, right? To have that.
I think so.
So one thing that's interesting that you mentioned with him being self-employed, I kind of want to jump into. So one of the things that I've noticed about you is that you're very much like a contrarian, right? Like when it comes to how you handle things. And an interesting story that I learned about you when I was watching another podcast you did is that at the age of 25, you're sitting there, you're telling your wife, hey, by the time I'm 35, I'm gonna retire, man. Like this is it,
Yeah.
And she didn't believe you, right? She was just like, okay. And I bet a whole lot of other people at 25 did not believe you, right?
No.
So you're going against the grain in terms of like, where does that mindset come from of like, well, I believe this is going to happen. I'm going to make this happen no matter what, even if people around me don't believe in me. And people around and other people's opinions are probably very negative of you at that point, right? And then you go and do it, man. Like it's just, so I just want to know kind of where that mindset of like, just, being a contrarian in that regard, just going through and plowing through no matter what.
So, as far as being contrarian, I mean, my mom will tell you I've been that way since I was 4. She couldn't parent. I'm doing what I want.
Yeah.
So I think some of that is just my personality.
Yeah.
I have an overwhelming. I just have an overwhelming personality, like a freight train. And I've always been that way.
Yeah.
Since I was a kid, my mom would spank me. She'd get the belt out and just chase me around and beat the shit out of me. And I'm like, I'm not changing my mind. I'm right.
You can spank me all you want, but it's not going to change my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I was never, I never had bad intentions with it. It was just like, I've learned that it's apparently very masculine. But it's like, if I know I'm right about something, I'm not going to be moved. I don't care if you're my teacher.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're the principal. I don't care if you're my boss. I mean, I had a boss at one point that I knew a bunch of stuff that was going on. I walked in his office, I looked him right in the eye and I said, you're a fucking asshole.
Oh, yeah. And this was your boss.
This is my boss. But I knew I could get away with it because it was like, bro, I sell more than the whole rest of the store combined.
Yeah.
You want to go? Let's go. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know where a lot of that comes from. I think a lot of that gets. I mean, you watch a 4-year-old and tell them no. What do they do?
Yeah, they immediately it's like a tantrum central. They go against the grain. I'm having that right now because I have a 4.5-year-old right now, or actually almost 5-year-old, and
more often than not, if you leave them alone, you walk back in there, and if they want a snack that's like 5 levels up in the cupboard, they'll stack boxes.
They get creative.
They'll figure out how to get what they want. And so I think in a lot of ways, there's some level of childishness to it. That as parents, between being a parent and saying, "Oh, you're not going to disrespect me like that," and then you go to school and it's like, stand in line, be quiet, raise your hand, all this stuff. I think a lot of almost everything we do in child raising is taking these instincts that a lot of especially boys, boys specifically, if you listen to the psychology, boys are far more disagreeable.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas girls are more relational. So girls are going to go with the flow more, even if they disagree.
Yeah.
just to keep the relationship intact. Whereas boys, it's you know, it's common. It's far more common in boys that they're going to be contrarian and disagreeable if it makes sense. And what we do as a society, as parents, as teachers, as all of it, is we tell them no every time. No, don't do that. Don't be that way. Don't be that way. And so they stop trusting themselves. And they stop believing almost in themselves. They stop asserting themselves. And for me, I think I was just too stubborn to have it beat out of me. Just like, no, I'm absolutely refused. If I know that I'm right, I don't care if you're my teacher or my boss. I'm now a boss. And I don't care if one of my employees calls me out about something. If they're right, I'm like, yeah, that's a better idea than immediately. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So it's not it doesn't come from a place of, superiority. It's just a matter of like objectively what makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And if you're an authority figure and what you're saying doesn't make sense, I'm not complying. I'm not agreeing. On the flip side, there's been a lot of times when my kids have called me out on stuff and I'm like, damn, you're right. I need to cut that shit out.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I'm contrarian. I would just say that for me, it's a matter of what makes the most sense. And I don't really care what the source is.
Yeah.
And so when I said I was going to be retired by the time I was 35, I had a plan. I'd done the math.
Yeah.
So it was just a matter of executing the plan, which I had complete control over. Yeah. So just because somebody else can't see the rest of the plan yet, some people would call that confidence. I just call it vision.
Okay. Yeah.
Somebody that would, let's say you're an architect, you've envisioned this palace that you're going to build. Well, of course, everybody around you is going to say, "Oh, you're crazy," but you've drawn the plans. You've got it all mapped out in your head. You've drawn it out. You know what steps you're going to execute, the materials you need. You don't know how long it's going to take necessarily.
Yeah.
But if you built this plan out in your head and you just execute the plan, the palace will be there.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think some of that comes from just a lack of vision and just believing in your own vision. Like, I have a vision in my head and I know that if I just work backwards, and that's from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It says one of them is begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So you envision this reality and then you work backwards from there into a system of steps that you can execute on a daily basis that will lead to that.
Yeah.
It's really not more complicated than that. I think a lot of guys are thinking, it's like going to the gym. If you want to look this certain way a year from now, okay, then work backwards and turn it into a system of daily steps. Like what workouts do you need to do every day? What does your diet need to look like? Mm-hmm. And if you consistently do that every day, people might call you crazy. I'm going to look this year from now.
Yeah.
But it's really just a matter of like, just because you can't see it with your own eyes yet doesn't mean like I know for sure if I do these workouts and eat this diet, I'm going to look something like this.
Yeah, something like the vision you have, right? Like, yeah. Yo, real quick, before we continue on with the content, right now, here in the US alone, close to 50% of all marriages are ending in divorce. That means 50% of families are broken, and the dad usually gets voted off the island and has to fight back with the courts to regain access to his kids. It is one of the worst things happening to our families right now, and here at Alpha Dad Consulting, we are on a mission to change this statistic. Most of the time, these divorces happen as a result of how you as a man show up to lead your family. This was the case when I almost lost mine. I was trying to be my wife's dad instead of trying to be her man, and it created a series of problems that almost ended our marriage. If I wouldn't have changed as a husband, as a man, and as a leader, our children would have never entered this world. Can you imagine your kids not existing, all because of something you failed to do? I can't and I refuse to. It took a lot of trial and error for me to turn my marriage around and create the family life I wanted. Look, I don't know where you are right now, but if your family life is not what you envisioned, a passionate marriage full of love and respect, an unbreakable bond with your kids, a fortified mindset, along with the necessary skills to build a life of abundance, then I want to give you the advantage I didn't have while I was figuring all this out. It's called the Alpha Dad Challenge, a free 7-day challenge that runs you through a proven blueprint of actions I've curated that you can take daily for 7 days to change your family life and get it closer to what you've always envisioned. The best part is that they don't take much time for you to do, and if you do them, they will have a significant impact on you and your family. Just go to alphadadconsulting.com/challenge to sign up. Again, that's alphadadconsulting.com/challenge. Accept the challenge and start showing up as the leader your family deserves. Now let's get back to the content.
One thing I think, I've written about this a little bit, is imagination. Men are creators. We build things.
Yeah.
Women tend to maintain things. They tend to take something that we built and they make it exponentially make it better.
Yeah.
They don't go out into the wilderness and forge the tree.
Yeah.
You forge the tree, you clear the land, you build the house, and she makes it a home.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the things that I don't hear talked about often enough about men is we've forgotten our roles as creators, as builders.
Yeah.
And we don't think about that as, if I said, oh, it's very masculine, I have imagination. If I took a poll of my stories, so what are the top 100 things you think about when you think about being masculine? Nobody would say imagination.
No one's going to list that one out, right? Yeah.
But how do you do any of the rest? What is the toughness for?
Yeah.
It's easy if you work backwards. You have an imagination, you have a big vision, and then you put these pieces together to build this thing. The discipline and the toughness and the grit and all the qualities we talk about, they just happen because they're a requirement to execute the plan. To get to the vision. Otherwise, why the hell be disciplined if you're not doing it for a reason? Nobody's disciplined for no reason. That's stupid.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, a lot of men in particular, that I talk to as well, like they get stuck in the dreamer phase, right? Like they'll say they want to build a business. They'll say they want to retire by the age of 35. They'll say they want to do all these things, but they won't take action or do like you said, they won't set up a plan, they won't execute. And I think it's interesting that you were mentioning about imagination, right? Because one thing I learned this recently, I learned this from a man named Myron Golden. I don't know if you've heard of him or if you've seen any of his stuff, but he's a big business guy, a Christian guy, and he's a business coach, right? And one of the things he talks about is that imagination essentially is the highest level of value, right? And he kind of equates it to like guys like Steve Jobs or guys like, anyone that like Elon Musk, right? Like anyone that's done this revolutionary thing, like where now we have like these phones that it started in someone's imagination, right? And they, like you said, they got a plan together. They had this vision in their head and they executed on that plan. And now, lo and behold, like we have all these devices that we're using, this technology that we're using. And that is it, man. Like that's exactly what you're talking about. That thing, imagination should be on that list, and it should probably be very, very high on that list.
Well, think about it. I mean, I'm reading the biography of Jim and Adams right now, right?
Okay.
And so these guys, you think about, this was only 200, not even 250 years ago. The whole world was a monarchy with various monarchies, city-states, communists. Where, like, other than the Greeks, where did the idea even come from to build a country like the United States?
Yeah.
You had a whole bunch of young guys in the 20s that just decided, I have a vision in my head of how life should be, how a country should be, how government should be.
Yeah.
And we're going to build that into reality. We are going to go to war, even though it makes no sense. It's the strongest nation that's ever lived. Strongest empire that's ever lived. They were crazy.
They were really crazy. Thank God. Thank God they were crazy.
Yeah, you know, but they weren't just tough.
Yeah.
They weren't just gritty. They
Yeah.
didn't just work hard.
Mhm.
They believed in an ideal and in a vision of something better that had never existed before. There was no precedent for what those guys did. They didn't just talk about it.
Yeah.
They went to war and fought and bled and died over it
Yeah.
for an idea.
You know where that takes me to is I was watching your speech on Renaissance of Man with Will, right?
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about the difference between confidence and experience, right? And I remember, do you mind elaborating on that a little bit and talking about like irrational confidence and how that plays in? Because I think that plays into what you're talking about and what
Yeah.
these guys had, right? Like,
Yeah, I think every piece of advice I've heard on confidence is wrong. Because they say it's all about experience. You know, and it's like, that's not, if you know beforehand you can do it, it takes no confidence to do it. You know, am I a confident person because I know I can walk across the room without falling down?
yeah,
Well, I mean, I know that from experience. It doesn't make me confident. You know, so every time we use the word confidence, what we're really saying is experience.
yeah,
Anybody that has experience that knows for sure they can do something is going to be confident. You'd be an idiot not to. Well, I'm not sure if I can walk across the room without falling down. That's stupid.
yeah,
Confidence is believing in yourself before you've done it yet, without having experience. It's irrational. It's not supposed to make any sense. It's believing in yourself. And you have no reason necessarily to believe in yourself. That if you're purely basing your confidence on outcomes that aren't immediately noticeable, you know, and I think too much. And I learned this in sales. I learned this from sports. It's something that I've trained people, all of my employees. You can't measure yourself on outcomes. Outcomes aren't controllable. If you're talking about sports, there are people trying to beat you.
yeah,
You know, and that's what a lot of guys they're told to go find their masculinity in the gym.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to start. But real life is more like while you're working out and bench pressing, somebody comes and rips one of the plates off. You're not completely in control.
Yeah.
If you're building a business, you're not completely in control. You have competitors that have more money than you. They're going to adjust to you. You know, if you're playing sports, if you're competing against somebody else, I was a baseball player, I was a pitcher. I could make a perfect pitch and the guy would still hit it.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can't measure yourself based on outcomes unless you measure outcomes over a very extended time frame.
Yeah.
Now, if I throw the perfect pitch every pitch of the game, then I'll win. But there's a lot of those perfect pitches. The umpire's going to call the ball. Maybe the guy hits it. Maybe my teammate makes an error.
Yeah.
There's all these uncontrollable factors. And that's why so many men feel like they're unprepared when they get into situations where they don't have complete control of the outcome. You know, because they've only ever done things that require them and inanimate objects. They go to school and they study for something. The textbook's not fighting back.
Yeah.
If you just take the time to read it, you'll learn it, and you take the test and you pass. And then you go to the gym and you lift weights. And as long as you eat right, as long as you do certain things, then you get results. And all of a sudden, you get thrown into a marriage, and this woman isn't an inanimate object. She actually might not agree with you.
Yeah.
She actually might have baggage or issues that weren't your fault that you now have to deal with. And all of a sudden, just imposing your will on it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And men don't know what to do. They don't know what to do when they get pushed back because they've only ever exerted themselves against things that are inanimate.
Yeah, there's no feedback. There's no pushback from an opposing force, right? And they get complacent in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think the confidence comes from irrational confidence. Is like, I don't care what you throw at me,
Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump out of the plane with full confidence that I will construct a parachute on my way down.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going to be confident they have a parachute strapped to that. And that's why everybody wants a sure thing.
Yeah.
That's what the internet, the whole damn Instagram is obsessed with. Like, what are all the great green flags for a woman that I should go for? Doesn't work that way. What you need to figure out how to do is somebody talk to women, how to solve problems, how to have a conversation, how to be persuasive. Because she's going to be feminist to some degree. She's going to bring things into it, baggage about men that you're going to have to wear from society, from culture, from previous experience with men, from the fact that she didn't have a dad.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be taking on all that shit. And none of it's your fault. Well, and some of it might be your fault. But even if you do everything, that's the thing, even if you execute everything perfectly as a man, stuff is still going to get squirrely because she's a human being that's bringing all these elements that are uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And too many men don't know what to do. They want to shoot.
Yeah.
Well, anybody's confident in a sure thing, in a business, that's a sure thing. They're not willing to take a risk. And so my confidence comes from the fact that I don't care what you think of me. I believe that I will figure it out. I don't know what to do yet. And that's where a lot of guys are like, oh, well, what happens if I do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's been a whole bunch of stuff that's happened to me before that I didn't know what to do. And I figured that out.
Yeah.
And so can you.
Yeah. Yeah, that lack of belief, man, like that, I see that so much now. Like it's become prevalent, especially amongst young men, especially amongst even men in our generation as well, that are still being plagued by that as well.
Well, you think about, I try to take myself out of it. And you think about a movie. You ever seen the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
If you'd have asked that before the movie started, hey, you think you could survive on an island for 4 years? He'd have been like, no. I mean, human beings have always figured it out.
Yeah.
We have thrived in some craziest situations as a species.
Yeah.
We've overcome some crazy stuff. And so we all have it within us. But if we're put in a situation where it's sink or swim, we figure out how to swim.
Yeah.
So if all of our ancestors were able to do it, and all these other people have been able to do it, they definitely weren't smarter. They didn't have nearly as much access to resources and knowledge that we have now. Why in the hell would anybody feel like, oh, I'm afraid of what might happen? Dude, random, normal people have figured out way more complicated stuff.
Yeah.
If you just put yourself in the situation where, and you burn the ships, you're like, I'm going here and I'm done. I'm not going back. There's no lifeboats. There's no life jackets. I am on this island and I'm making it my home. And that's how I view marriage. It's like, we're on this island. There's no lifeboats. Me and you. So even though right now you're driving me nuts, we're going to figure it out. We're going to put some duct tape on it. We're going to wrap up forever, Like, we're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. We're stuck on this island. If we want it to be a miserable island and keep doing what we've been doing, I don't want it to be a miserable island. So let's figure out how to make it a fun island.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means, like, I'm going to go spend the night in a cave. And you get your shit together on the beach, and I'll see you in a few days. Because right now you're pissed off.
Yeah, it's the reality sometimes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. So what I wanted to touch base with you on is where does the whole idea of believing in God, right? Like faith in God, and having faith in a creator, a higher power, where does that fit in the equation of being a man, right? And masculinity, at least for you in your experience, how has that been for you?
You know, I think it's becoming a prominent thing to connect the two right now.
Mm,
Um, for me personally, I don't think they're connected.
mm,
Um, I grew up in a Christian home.
yeah.
I went to Christian school 5 days a week.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Um, so I was in church 6 days a week until I was 18 years old. Man.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I had to go outside of Christianity to find masculine role models
Mm,
because they were all goofy and cheesy and like,
yeah.
golly gee shucks, you know. And it's so, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that everybody in America called themselves Christian.
Yeah.
And those are the same dads that checked out, that secretly had an alcohol problem,
Yeah.
beating their wives, and all that stuff. Um, I think you're seeing a revival of true Christianity right now
Mm,
because when you follow the truth to its source, you just keep following the logical steps. You start with rejecting the cultural idea that there's something wrong with being a man.
mm,
And you start thinking about what it really means to be a man, a protector, a provider. And then you go to looking at a woman and the traditional role that a woman plays nurturing the home. You know,
yeah.
for me, I didn't have that to go off of. I told my wife, logically, I'm built on somebody has to raise the kids.
Mm,
School is just babysitting that with arithmetic.
yeah.
It's not raising them. It's not teaching what they're doing. It's not teaching them right and wrong morality.
Yeah.
So somebody has to raise the children. And she's better equipped to do that. You know, like you take the whole masculinity, femininity thing out of it. Like you look at it like some guys are just built to be offensive linemen.
Yeah.
They're 6'7", 350 pounds, and when they move, when they push, things move, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, meanwhile, you get like a free safety that's 5'11", 190, 4'40". Like, telling those two people that they should do the same job is stupid.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't make any logical sense.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done in society is, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And so we tell the offensive linemen, like, oh, you can go be the free safety if you want to. You know, it doesn't make any sense, right? And so in most cases, you look at that and you say, okay, man is built this way, a woman is built this way, and you keep following those paths, and then somebody presents you with the Bible, and it's like the final piece of the puzzle.
Mm,
Because it goes all the way back to Jesus, right? Like,
yeah.
it's the original sin. The man didn't, he was passive and allowed Eve to eat of the fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the original curse. People think, oh, you believe in curses. I mean, I don't usually, but when you look at the curse in Genesis, it says, man, you will have to work and you will fight with the ground, and the ground will smite your foot.
Mm,
Basically, it's going to be hard. We're going
yeah.
to curse you to a life of hardship and labor. That was man's curse.
Yeah.
What was the woman's curse?
The labor, right? The painful birth and
You have
all
painful
that.
childbirth,
Yeah.
and you will be under the dominion of man,
Mm-hmm.
and you will hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's
And
all right there in the first book.
now you look at how that and say,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
people say it was written by men. The Bible, if you don't believe in the Bible, was written by men. Well, whoever man wrote that 6,000 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Because we're watching it play out in real time still.
Yeah.
And so I think there's two different distinctions where there's a lot of masculine not known that they were Christians, but they came to Christianity after becoming a man.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways, when you're raised in Christianity, it's almost like it suits your mental growth because it confines you in a lot of these ways of like, as a man, you reconcile verses in the Bible that say, turn the other cheek.
Yeah. I've always had an issue with that, man. Like, being a Christian man and being looked at as weak, like you have to turn the other cheek, or else you're not being Christian. Like when there's danger upon your family or danger upon yourself, right? Like like it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, it really doesn't.
It's hard for a lot of Christians to reconcile this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus said, if somebody comes and wants your shirt, wants your cloak, give him your shirt and your pants too. Give him everything.
Yeah.
I'm not a theologian. I don't know how to reconcile that, but it's like, no.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. And so that's one of the things that I struggle with, most of the New Testament. I think, it was all about how to be a Christian. And it was about how to interact with other Christians and how to build churches. It didn't really go into a lot of, it didn't tell you, like, there's not a whole lot in there. Here's how to be a good dad.
Yeah.
Paul didn't write about that. Didn't say, like, they were all evangelists. How do you be a Christian if you're not an evangelist? If you're not out planting churches? If you're a plumber? It's hard. There's a lot of stuff that makes it tough. And I think if you have that in place, as you're developing your identity as a man, it takes a lot of cards up to the table. It makes you feel like a lot of stuff is wrong that may not be wrong.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That's because it's definitely something I've thought about, and I didn't grow up in the church. Like I got to church when I was like 13. That's when I started going. And then maybe when I was like 15, 14 is when I really started kind of taking it seriously. First it was just, the church girls, right? Like that's what I would go for. And then after that it was, I kind of got convicted and started doing the whole thing, started getting involved and all that. But
the biggest thing, I've seen a lot of passivity. I've seen the Bible, Christianity create a lot of passivity with men where, we have if you've listened to me on podcasts, I've really told this story before, but we had a friend that she and her husband had moved, 8 hours a week, trying to franchise his business.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And they were living apart about a year, found out that, and he just lost him. So basically went down there and had a midlife crisis. He ended up starting an affair, all this stuff. Well, our family friend still lived here. His parents lived. She goes to his father, said, "Help me. What should I do?" He said, "Oh, we're praying a lot." And dude, if you knew growing up in the church, all of my friends were Christians. All of my friends' dads were Christians. That's all they did.
Yeah,
we're praying about it.
We're praying for you. Yeah,
and it's like, no. I promise you, if my son pulls that shit in 15 years, you think I'm going to sit here and pray about it?
Yeah. No.
I'm going to.
You're going to go out.
I'm going to grab him by the back of his shirt collar and say, "Pack your shit up. We're coming home."
Yeah.
I'll pray about it later.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I've tried to figure it out my whole life. I don't know why, but something about growing up in a Christian environment makes men passive.
Yeah.
By and large, it makes men passive.
It's become the culture in there. You know what I mean? Because that was one of the things that kind of drew me to the Apogee kind of program, right? Because I've been in churches before, and I've been like in men's groups and that kind of thing, but it's very surface level, man. Like they don't talk about the deep stuff, right? Like they don't go into the actual tactics, strategies, like the things that we need to do as men to become better men, to become better husbands, and it's very surface level. You know, you'll quote a verse here and there and it sounds great, but how do I apply it? Right? Like where's the application of that? How does that translate to actual actionable steps? Because we're so action oriented, right?
Well, it
So
almost makes you, it turns you into like, oh, I want to be a good Christian.
yeah.
And it's like before everything you do, you have to weigh it against, like, oh, am I being a good Christian?
Yeah.
You know, and for me, that's just not. One verse that I always go back to is trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, he will direct your path.
Mm.
So it's like if you trust in the Lord with all your heart, you don't have to understand everything. Acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. And for me in my life, man, I feel like my path has been on train tracks. Like I don't stop and pray about it. If it's obvious to me, I act. I go. There's in the Old Testament it talks about I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Gideon. Somebody it was. You'll know my presence is there. You'll know when to start the battle because the wind will move ahead of the trees.
Mm.
And you just go. When you see the wind blowing, you go.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like a lot of times God has made it very obvious to me that I'm not supposed to be doing something.
Yeah.
You know, what does it say? Whom God loves, he corrects. A lot of guys are afraid of making God mad, so they don't do anything. Whereas for me, I go. I do what makes the most sense. And I assume that God opened those doors, created those paths for a reason.
Yeah.
And if I'm on the wrong path, he'll correct me.
Oh, he'll let you know.
It won't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And that's when and so until God slams the door in my face, I'm going to go at light speed in the direction that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to trust in the Lord with all my heart. I'm not going to lean on my own understanding about, well, like Instagram. It doesn't make any sense that I've got 40,000 followers. I don't understand. I don't even know how Instagram works still.
Yeah. I was going to mention that earlier too, when I was talking to you about Contrarian, right? Because even in that, right? Like your posts are very different than anything out there. Like, and you're looking for all the Instagram gurus out there. They'll tell you, oh, you got to post reels, you got to post carousels, you got to do this and that. And here's Ryan King with his page, and he has 10 carousel or 10 slides, which read like a long story, like a long post, and it's engaging, and you want to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
And there you are, man. Like you had that exponential growth. So, where did that come from? Like, what inspired you to be like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna start this, and I'm gonna put this stuff out there.
I was bored.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
That's the short version. So I started thinking about writing a book.
Okay.
It was the original thing. It was going to be called The Wisdom of Kings.
Okay, gotcha.
And I was going to write it to my boys as like a modern day Proverbs. Like, this is our family knowledge. I don't want it to die with me. Here are the things I've learned. And
I love that, man. That's powerful. I love that.
And so just on a whim, I started, well, let me interject for a whim. I started looking at self-publishing.
Okay.
And everything I looked at publishing was like, even if you're a published author with like a major publishing company, it's still on you as the author to promote the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just started saying, okay, if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to build an audience first. That way, when I release the book, there'll be a lot of people ready to buy it.
Yeah.
Essentially. And so just on a whim, I've got on Instagram, and I'd never been on Instagram before. Like I did not have Instagram. And so I just looked to see if that username was available, The Wisdom of Kings.
Yeah.
And it was available. And I was like,
so you snatched it up.
Oh, yeah. And so to this day, I still write all of my content on Instagram and PowerPoint.
That's crazy.
That's all I know how to use.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think of it like chapters in a book.
Yeah.
I try to take a topic and I try to fully resolve it within 10 slides. and give people actionable, actionable experience or insight or thoughts or whatever. And so, yeah, it's like, I think of it like chapters in the book, and people say, oh, Instagram's this thing that's like a short attention span or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to do reels because there's nothing I have to say worth saying that I can say in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. I don't have anything to offer. So I'm not going to play a game that I know I can lose. If you want to, learn from me, I require 8 minutes of your attention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take it or leave it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And it works, man, because, I mean, people engage with it, and then that the people that are actually following you are actually, they're actually engaged with your content. They're actually reading all the posts and all that. And I'm one of those, man. I credit you, to be honest, because for I have it right here, but it's the myth of the high value man. You remember that one? Yeah.
That was a big one.
So I was big into, I don't say big into, but I was definitely going down the rabbit hole of like the Tate, right? Like Andrew Tate and like the red pill whole thing, and trying to because a lot of that stuff was hitting my feed, especially on YouTube. And I'm like consuming this thing, trying to start something in the dad niche myself. And I'm like, are there elements of this that are true? Are there, what's going on here? And then I see your post and I read the whole thing, right? And I'm like, man, Ryan just made a huge point. And the last slide on that you had, which is where you talked about how all these guys talk about doing the hardest thing, right? That they do hard things and they're high value men and all that. And you pose the question, well, what's harder, right? Going out and sleeping with all these women and taking the pick of the litter or whatever you want, or being loyal and faithful to one woman for the rest of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that point, man, that you made, I was like, that's it. That switched it for me. I was like, yeah, this is nonsense. This is what I need to be on. Yeah. So I thank you for that, brother. Like that was one of the greatest posts that I had seen, especially on that topic. So yeah, it was awesome.
Well, I think everything about that whole like I didn't know any of this was going on with the red pill, sleeping around, and, finding multiple and all that stuff. I'd seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
that's it. It's that whole red pill thing. What's so ironic about it is that they're teaching men to be. I started writing on Instagram because what the feminists accused men of, abusing their power, treating women like they're disposable. All they care about is, being greedy, making money, showing off their fancy cars, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like all the things that the feminists accuse men of. I was like, I'm not like that at all. And it pisses me off that I'm being misrepresented. So I got on Instagram with the intention to be like, here's what a good man is. What my idea of a good man is. I try to be a good man. I'm not saying I'm the best man in the world or anything, but I mean, I'm definitely not what these feminists are accusing men of. There's no like a patriarchy meeting that we have every 6 weeks
to try to oppress them or
behind the scenes. Like, hey, how do we keep women down? I don't know what y'all are talking about. And what's ironic is that I wasn't aware of a lot of the red pill stuff from like the first year I was on Instagram. People started sending me reels with Andrew Tate and some of these other guys. I'm like, so these jackasses think that the answer to feminism is to become the very thing they've lied about us. They've made up all these lies about men being a certain way. You think the way to get back at them is to become all the things they accuse us of? You think that's a winning strategy?
Yeah.
No, that's reactive. It's you like taking your ball and going home because somebody called you a name. No, the way you beat feminism is that you become the type of man that makes that stuff untrue.
Yeah, that's.
I mean,
That's powerful, man. Because that's exactly right. And yeah, there's so many people right now, so many young men definitely right now that are falling for it, and
Because it makes logical sense, and it's. I'm 40, so I have a different temperament now
Mhm.
than when I was 20.
Yeah.
Like if I was a 20-year-old guy and I was reading about how everything was men's fault, everything's the patriarchy's fault, and all that stuff, then it would be easy for me to see somebody like Andrew Tate that's basically being the male version of a radical feminist
Yeah.
and say, okay, well, if I have to pick a side, I'm going to pick Andrew Tate's side.
Yeah.
My argument, as a more mature perspective, as much as that might feel good for him to say all the things that you wish you could say to feminists,
Yeah.
it's not solving.
Yeah.
It's not going to fix it. It's not going to make it. It's just going to make women more feminist and bitter and alone.
Yeah.
And then you're going to end up, it's going to make a bunch of women old with cats. And it's going to make a bunch of men that end up old, drunk dogs.
Yeah.
And neither of y'all are going to be happy. Because here's who's not feminist. Women who have had a present loving father.
Yeah.
I've yet to meet. So patriarchy means rule by fathers.
Hmm.
That's what the root of the word is. Rule by fathers. I've yet to meet a man or a woman who grew up with a loving, present, masculine father that led them and protected them, that guided them, and did everything that a man is called to do. I've yet to meet a man or a woman who had a problem with a man.
Yeah.
If they were really had a patriarch.
Yeah.
Rule by father.
Yeah, it's like it's being led, right? Like they're being led by a father, a present father, and you're right, man. My wife is that. You know, she had an amazing relationship with her father. Sadly,
she's probably not a stark raving feminist who believes in the patriarchy.
Absolutely not. Yeah, she's a wonderful person, man. She follows my lead. You know, trust me, and understands that every move that I make is for the benefit of our family. It's not a me thing. It's like an us thing, right? It's for us to move forward, for us to progress. And it just, it's a very different dynamic than having somebody or having a woman that believes in all those ideals, right? So,
well, the reason that those things catch and and stick is that for those women, it's true. Their dad was an alcoholic. Their dad beat their mom. Their dad wasn't around. The dad treated them like shit.
Yeah.
Like, I personally know a woman whose dad told her whole life as a child, I wish you were a boy.
Wow.
Why wouldn't she hate men? Why wouldn't she be anti-patriarch? Yeah. And so that's what frustrates me with Andrew Tate's world and all that stuff. It's like, that's not solving anything. It can make you feel good to vent.
Yeah.
But what we need right now is leaders who lead men and women, who teach men how to be good men, who teach men how to be good men, true patriarchs, and everything that means, which is all about sacrifice, service, and selflessness, and commitment, and loyalty, and integrity, and all that's, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
If you build men like that, women won't want patriarchy.
Yeah.
Because it's what's best for them. Will Nolan talks about this. Patriarchy is built by women. Women control men far more than any of these red pill guys want to pretend. Because women control access to sex.
Yeah.
And everything, if it wasn't for sex, men would... Okay, if it wasn't for sex, men would have... There's a 10% chance that we would have colonized Mars. Or we would probably still be running around in barbarians, murdering each other and sleeping in tents. We wouldn't have done all the stuff that we've done. Patriarchy, peace because women had asked. They've said before we had all these civilized jobs that women could go get in air conditioning. Back when labor meant digging ditches, or planting crops, or going to war.
Yeah.
Women were all about patriarchy. They were going to select the most masculine man they could find, and then women are very. Think about if we didn't have all this civilization. While a woman's pregnant, she's very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
She can't run. Even if she's not pregnant, she can't run as fast. She can't jump as high. She's not strong, all that stuff.
Yeah.
When she is pregnant, she can barely move for the last half of it. If we're still living in an uncivilized situation where there's wild animals, bandits, and all kinds of,
Yeah. All
for
kinds
most
of
of
dangers.
and then when you have a baby, that baby is very vulnerable for how long? 12, 13 years?
Yeah.
And at that time, there's no birth control. So a woman has 5 or 6 kids. So she's pregnant for most of her life
Mm-hmm.
with dependents that she has to look out for constantly, that are helpless for a span of 20 years. So yeah, they want a patriarch because they have no time for anything else. It's what's best for them.
Yeah.
What happened? What in most of society? What would happen to a woman that got pregnant and then the man died? Or widows and orphans couldn't provide for themselves. We know. Look, historically, this went on for 4,000 years. We have recorded history of what happened to women without men.
Yeah.
They were helpless. Patriarchy, as it has existed, has been because women selected it. Now all of a sudden, we're complaining now that the world has been tamed and there's no danger of roving bandits with wild beasts coming into your camp and killing you. I mean, we just referenced earlier, the founding of America, founding fathers of America.
Yeah.
I mean, the Wild West, you watch a Western, these people out on these homesteads where Indians would come raid and they would kill the man and take the woman into sex slavery and scalp the children.
Mm-hmm.
That was in like 1890.
Yeah. Wasn't too long ago, right?
It was not long ago.
Yeah.
And we've already, and that did men abuse that power, especially in the last 100 years? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. But we didn't just abuse women. Andrew Carnegie and Rockefeller and all that, they built their fortunes while men were dying in coal mines.
Yeah.
That's why unions were created. I don't remember which one it was, but I think it was Carnegie that was the oil guy. And no, he was the steel guy. Carnegie was the steel.
Oh, okay.
And the men in the steel factories that he built were dying. They were getting paid like $1 a day.
Yeah.
And they were dying in the factories and stuff. And he didn't change anything. He was like, I'm not paying them more. I don't care if they die. There's more farmers. And that's why they came together and built labor unions, because they had no rights. They were really dying in the steel mills. And Carnegie didn't care. He was sitting back counting his money.
Yeah.
He did that to men. Well, women point back to this is how men behave. They take advantage of women. It's like, no, men like that take advantage of everybody.
Yeah, they take advantage of everybody. Yeah, they don't care.
Don't sit there and paint me and with that brush of like, oh, that's how men are. No.
Yeah.
That dude's a prick. And what we haven't done of it as is police bad behavior of other men.
Yeah.
We've let other men set the tone. And that's why I go after guys like Andrew Tate and all these other guys. Because it's like, if you stand by and do anything, they're going to be the ones defining what masculinity is, and the rest of us are too cowardly to pull them out.
Yeah.
So, no, you don't speak to me.
Yeah.
Because if good men like us don't speak out against bad behavior of other men, then if we leave unspoken where we stand, and there's a woman that doesn't know how to classify us, well, what do you think she's going to do? She's going to assume we're just like all those other guys.
Yeah. That's true, man. We definitely need to keep the the voices on this side going and to become louder than everything that's happening on that side. Because it's the way, like you said, doing it that way is just going to cause more division and more of the same, and make things worse, as opposed to doing it the way we're doing it. So, man, brother, I appreciate you, brother. We went over 10 minutes. I apologize. We were having a good conversation. I didn't want to stop.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
I have one last question I want to ask you. I always ask my guests here this last question. And in your experience from working with so many men, right, that you've had conversations with, if you've had to narrow it down to a few traits, what makes a dad a great family leader, in your opinion?
I think there's a lot of answers I could give to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most difficult one for myself and for most of the men that I talk to is presence.
Hmm.
There's a lot of irony in life. It seems like it goes hand in hand that when it's dad time, it's also career time. And it's figuring out how in the hell to be married time.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not a gradual thing, right? It's like all this, it's like you're walking along and like you're a man, you graduate from high school and you graduate from college and you're just kind of walking along and all of a sudden this backpack gets put on your back. It's got like 500 pounds on it and you just smash into the ground, and it's like all of a sudden you got to figure out how to be a good husband, how to be a good dad, and how to make money, and how to change a tire, and how to pay your taxes.
Yeah.
And like it's just like
that's the worst
all
one.
this stuff at once. And I think the hardest thing as a man is like you're in like mission activation mode, where everything is like a hammer. Everything's like a nail. You just walk around with a hammer all day long, just nailing stuff. And it's the easiest, most like moment driven thing to come home and see your marriage as and you just, instead of being loving, talkative, and present, anything she brings up, it's like, oh, that's a nail. I got to stop and hammer. Your kid your kid crying isn't a nail for you to go solve. You need to go read them a bedtime story. And man, God, it's so easy for us to sit and talk about right now, but I promise you, we're both going to struggle with it. Because it's so hard to shift. Men have a really hard time shifting gears. Women can multitask. They can shift gears. They can shift modes. As a dude, I've spent 8 hours working my balls off, going 90 minutes, and just flip that switch off, and to not be a bitch and all that stuff. Come home and be like a loving dad and just present with my family. If you're not super intentional, and I think a lot of life is like, for most of life, all of it, no matter how intentional we are, we only have so much willpower in a day, right? And so for most of us, that's how our mind works. Like our brain is built around like our prefrontal cortex is our conscious mind. And it's like a thin film over the front of our brain. That's the smallest part of our brain. Most of our brain is gray matter, and that's where our habits are. That's why we can drive and think about other stuff. Because it's gone from the prefrontal cortex to like the automatic
To the autopilot mode.
Do without thinking. And so most of life, as we're going through our day, we use up so much of our prefrontal cortex on problem solving, all this stuff. And so it's almost like, as much as human beings in general, as much as we can, we're like people sitting in like a kayak on a river. That most of the time we're just floating where the current is. Right? Like, we only have so much energy in a day to paddle. I don't care how tough you are or how strong you are. Like, you're still spending like 70% of your day, and you ain't paddling. You're just going where the river's flowing. And you're picking your spots when you choose to paddle. I think if you're not consciously aware of it, you come home and you're just ready to sit in that kayak and go where the current is going, and you're not present with your family. And so I think for most men, that's the biggest thing that makes them a family man. Your family is, you've got to be present at home and everything in life at the times where it's most important, when your kids are young, are also, and everything in life is conspiring against you to keep you from being present.
Yeah.
It's easy for grandpas to be present.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Their money is set. It is what it is, and they're not stressed about stuff anymore. And that's why grandparents are so much better with the grandkids.
Yeah.
Because they're just present. They don't have all these distractions going on. And I think that's something that I've still mastered.
Yeah, same here.
Every second that I'm not intentionally, consciously aware of being present, I'm not. I'm thinking about the next mission, my goals, my objectives. And as good as that is, in some ways, it's a distraction in other ways from just being present or just wrestling with your kids.
Yeah.
Just, you don't have to feel like, just be there.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's that's powerful. I'm definitely taking that. And even right now, as you were saying it, I was, when you gave that analogy of walking around with the hammer and you're nailing things, right? And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, yeah, that happens to me a lot, I think about moments where my son wants to come and he wants to play dinosaur fights, you know what I mean? Like, he wants to do little things.
Bro.
I'm like, hey, man, I got to go to this meeting, or I got to go do this thing. And it's those little moments, man, like they compound over time.
And they don't come back.
And they don't come back. They don't come back. Exactly.
I'm telling you,
yeah.
Kids are 14 and 12. They don't ask me this or that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to look back and you're going to remember what you said no to go do instead.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
it's heartbreaking. But it's also just part of the burden of being a man. My wife has a lot of those memories.
Yeah.
Because I was out carrying burdens. And that's a sacrifice that breaks my heart. And I also know that I did my job.
Yeah.
At least my wife has. At least my kids have that with her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing, man. But I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate all the work that you do, man. And just, thank you so much for coming on and giving me, your time and being able to come in and pour into my audience and these guys that listen to the podcast here and watch the show here. Yeah, man, you dropped some great wisdom, and I hope these guys take it into account, especially this last part about presence, man. It's super important. So, yeah. All right, brother. I'm gonna let you go, but before I let you go, where can we find out about you? Can you give us your tag? I'm gonna put all the description I'm gonna put everything in the description as well. But and what's your next mission, man? What do you got going? Do you have anything that you're diving into? Is the book coming out? What's going on? Yeah.
Things tend to happen like they don't happen right. They're just like a flood, like Instagram. It grew so much faster than I expected.
Yeah.
And kind of the whole point of me being in a hurry to retire by 35 was that my boys are 14 and 12,
Yeah.
And the next 6 to 8 years with him, this is dad time. It's the most important time of their lives. So I'm trying to just kind of not have a mission,
Yeah.
because my mission is them.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of opportunities with social media and podcasts and books and speaking with appearances and things like that that I've had to pull back on, because I know I could easily get sucked into all that and miss out on more dinosaur fights.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to miss it anymore right now. So for me, I'm kind of intentionally just treading water.
Yeah.
Until they're out of the house. And I'll figure out what my next move is at that point, but I don't know how to do things halfway.
Yeah.
You ever watch Parks and Recreation with Ron Swanson?
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, Ron Swanson was my favorite character on that show.
Don't ever half-ass anything. Either use your whole ass.
Yeah.
So I'm a whole ass type of guy, so I have to be careful what I get myself into, because it kind of takes on a life of its own.
Yeah. I liked his instruction manual thing, and it just said either, I think it said be a man or I do what I want or something like that.
You should have a permit. I can do what I want.
Yeah, I can do it. It's the greatest, man. Greatest. Yeah. Yeah. All right, brother. Well, no, I totally respect that, man. And yeah, enjoy them dinosaur fights. You got to do that. And your boys, man, I get to watch them sometimes on the young men's calls, brother. And like those guys ask some of the most phenomenal questions of these mentors. Even some better ones than we ask some of our mentors. So, yeah, man, keep doing what you're doing with those boys. They're turning out to be great young men. So,
yeah, I'm pretty proud.
Yeah, man. All right, brother. Well, you have yourself a good evening, man. And when I'm up there visiting my folks, man, I definitely want to connect with you when you're
absolutely. Yeah. I expect you to come by.
Yes, sir. Will do. All right, brother.
All right.
You have a good night. Thank you.
You too.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ryan King. I will link up his Instagram page in the description / show notes below. All right, my fellow Alpha Dad, I'll catch you on the next one.
1, 2, 3 actions I didn't meet. 4, 5, 6 fear and silence begin to mix. 7, 8, 9 the thought of being emotionless started taking over my mind.